Thanks for joining us. I hope you're enjoying the bagels and the schmear. We brought that in early. I made sure that was here. That didn't land. This is Matt Fantazier. He is the head of integrated media at Kenvue. Good friend, good partner of ours, and so very excited to have this conversation with you guys all today. We're going to talk a little bit about 25 predictions. We're going to talk first, though, about some 24 stuff, but then really want to hear your thoughts on stuff coming into play in 2025. Let's do it. All right, let's do it. So, since we're talking about 25, let's start off with what we always start off with at Roku. Like, what are you streaming and what do you want to stream in 25? What's exciting out there?
I think Stranger Things is probably my most anticipated show of 2025. I don't like scary things, so I kind of watch it like this a little bit. It's my baby, but it's a really good show, so it's probably my most anticipated.
It's creepy, and it's still got the 80s vibe, which
Pretty awesome.
it's pretty awesome, no doubt about it. So Kenvue was spun out of J&J in 2023. How has that changed how you're going to market? How's that changed your brand and marketing strategy?
Yeah, about 18 months ago, so May of 2023, we spun out from J&J Consumer. In case you're wondering what's Kenvue, the joke I always make, and it's still relevant, is my mom doesn't know what Kenvue is still, so I feel like we still need to explain it. But big change. I mean, we were part of a giant healthcare, predominantly pharmaceutical company for years and years and years, and with that came, we were part of a conglomerate, and our role has evolved now. We are on our own, and really the job to be done is growth. We are staying on our own, we are doing our own investor relations sort of calls and updates, and it's all about us, and which is really exciting. It's a huge shift. And when we had our earnings reports, everyone was curious about pharma, because that was the biggest part. Now everyone wants to know about Tylenol and Neutrogena, which is super exciting for us, but changes the point of view a lot. You're really focused on how do we win in the marketplace. It is all us. If there's a question on can we do something, it's like, well, can we? Where before, depending on the scale of things, sometimes it'd have to go through corporate approval if we were doing a big partnership or acquisitions or what have you. There was always kind of a chain of command, and now it's kind of when you become an adult and you can decide if you want to eat ice cream for dinner. It's like, you do whatever you want. It's just they have to pay for it. So it's been a really interesting ride. Very interesting to be in a Fortune 100 startup, which is essentially what it feels like. But it's been exciting to be able to sort of chart our course and say, what do we want to be? How do we want to show up? And have the agency to do that.
That's awesome. Wild to see just that how nimble you can be, right? As I don't want to call it a smaller company, but certainly spun out smaller company.
We're smaller. Big, but smaller.
Big but small. Fortune 100 startup. Yeah, great. Kenvue's not your only job. You got a side hustle. Can you tell us a little bit about, and I'm going to plug this for you, but you can plug away too, Substack, Matt's Hot Takes on Substack. If you haven't read, please check it out. But love to hear how it sort of came about and what keeps driving you to do that every Friday.
Yeah, be sure to smash the subscribe button, guys. I've got dozens of fans that listen to me. It actually started about 8 years ago now, a little over 8 years ago, and it started very innocently. We had just created digital marketing jobs at J&J at the time, and I was always interested in digital. It's something I was passionate about, but anyone who's been in the industry for a long time, if you think back 10-ish years, super new, we're still talking about what is programmatic, what is this streaming thing? Is it a thing? So I would actually send out articles to my team so they know what I'm talking about. So I would say, hey, here's this announcement that just came out that I think we need to think about, or here's this new ad product that was released and it seems interesting, we should talk about it. And it was just like here's stuff that's going on a bi-weekly basis. And then started adding in some of my own commentary, because no one needs to see forwarded emails, that's pretty boring. So I'd add in my hot take, which was like, why do I think this matters? Give someone a reason to actually read and have a bit of an opinion on it. And started kind of getting passed around, people asked to be added, so I'm like, okay, we can do that. And then eventually turned it into a more legit pursuit a number of years ago in a newsletter and all that. So it's something I do bi-weekly. It is a process, it is a labor of love, but it's a lot of fun to be able to kind of stay sharp. And really the purpose for it now is keeps me close to what's going on in the industry. I like sharing that and talking about it with folks. It's the fun part of the job, and if you can't do that, then it's pretty miserable. So it's something I kind of, it's a positive part of my week that I can look forward to, and comes out every other week and coming up soon will be our 2025 predictions. So get a little preview of that today, but just kind of talking on trends.
You're not going to let too much out of the bag today.
I want people to subscribe. You got to have to tease it a little bit. So give you a free preview.
For all the brand marketers, is it proudly ad supported yet or not?
It is not. It is proudly a volunteer effort at this point.
Soon enough, soon enough. All right, so before we jump into 25, let's just think about 24 for a second. So thinking about major advertising developments, consumer behavior that was surprising to you, or something that kind of came out of left field as you think about it.
Not surprising, but I think the trend that was most interesting to me was social commerce. We've been talking about it for probably 4 or 5 years at this point, and it's always been like coming soon. It's like, yeah, that's going to take off. People are going to start buying everything through Instagram and on their televisions and all this. And it really hasn't happened. And it was always sort of a head scratcher to me because the behavior is there. People absolutely pay attention to the content and creators that they follow. They're engaged in all these different platforms. The technology actually exists, which is kind of interesting. It's oftentimes some of these things feel like Star Wars, but no, you can conduct business over these platforms. People just didn't do it. It wasn't a behavior in the US. And then you have the whole, China aspect of it. If you look to the East, it's a huge behavior in China. It's a massive part of their economy. It just never really took hold here, and it's kind of like, all right, maybe this isn't a thing. Maybe that's not what American consumers, how they want to shop. I think, in the last year, we've seen this really take off. TikTok Shop's a big part of this catalyst, but not just there. I think it's starting to gain traction. So I think that's one of the things that has kind of been one of these on-the-side trends that we're aware of, but not serious about, to now we have to think about it as part of our planning, and that's kind of new and pretty exciting.
That's interesting, and certainly thinking about big brands in a TikTok shop, right, as opposed to like more D2C things. How do you think about that from a Kenvue perspective?
Super interesting. We are blessed with distribution. So people don't need to seek out our products. Typically, we're in your local Dwayne Reed and Walmart and Target on Amazon. Very easy to find. It's a good problem to have, but it also makes it less likely that someone would be like, hey, I need to impulse buy Listerine on TikTok. It's like, you just you're going to be at the supermarket later today. I'll just get it there. The way we thought about it is really as part of our overall comms as a way to drive organic creator content through affiliates, as a launch platform. It's a longer form sort of experience so people can talk about benefits, sort of a live review sort of aspect to it. So we thought about it as part of a broader 360 comms activation versus just commerce while it's scaling. Today, the scale is still not huge, but it's a muscle that we feel like we need to build given sort of the trajectory of the marketplace.
I love hearing that perspective. It's something we think a lot about at Roku is what we're doing commerce-wise off of the TV screen. And we'll talk more about that sort of from a 25 standpoint, but with this device, just like you do on your phone, and actually, whatever it was, 5, 7, 10 years ago, people buying stuff on their phone seemed archaic and strange, right? And we're seeing this now, this behavior starting to happen. We're trying to fuel it, but interested to hear sort of we'll talk more about 25 prediction in a sec. But
not get ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, come on. One thing we've been thinking about as well from a 24 surprise is the growth of AVOD. And in streaming, for sure, thinking about just the acceleration. We knew, obviously, subscription fatigue was happening. Obviously, we're seeing the big players moving not only from a subscription ad-free experience, but into a subscriber ad-supported experience as well. And the AVOD piece of it has been growing like crazy. How does that open up things for you? How do you think about that perspective?
Yeah, I think part of it is the experience isn't bad. I think a lot of the streamers have gotten it right, that the ad load isn't bad, the experience can be additive with sort of these click-to-buy things, or choose your own adventure ads if you want to pick into something that you're more interested or not. There's a lot of innovation on the ad side that I think is really interesting. So for us, it's really thinking about what's possible, what's the best way to communicate our message, and it's opened up a lot of possibilities beyond just picking spots and programming. It's like you can actually get creative with this and get targeted. You can there's different experiences. So it's been really interesting, and the scale has made it viable. In the past, it's been tiny. It hasn't been something we take seriously necessarily, but in the last couple of years, it's obviously grown dramatically and continues to. So it's it really gets talked about more synonymously as video for us at this point versus kind of a standalone thing.
Yeah, and we'll talk about scale, certainly reach, and we'll talk about that good stuff soon. But I think that, to me, that's the piece where it starts to hit pay dirt, right? Like if there's a real audience there, and now it's targetable, it's measurable. You can. Someone was asking about closed loop attribution before, but that's a big piece of it that I think is additive, and I'm glad to hear that's the perspective. Last 24 question. No one moved to 25, so get ready. But from your perspective, fill in the blank. For the industry, our industry, 24 will be remembered as the year of what?
I'd say sports. I think that is one that has really taken off. And sports has always been big, obviously. But there's a couple of factors that have contributed to this. I think part of it is it moving into a streaming environment has been really interesting. The NFL Peacock game early in January kind of opened up the year as sort of a big bang moment of, oh my gosh, there's an NFL playoff game that you only can see through a streaming platform.
We were in Vegas talking about that. Everybody was up in arms during Vegas CES about that game.
A little bit of a flex. I had pneumonia, sorry if you caught it. That was like a really rough week for me. A little peek behind the curtain. Not Vegas induced. But
you can read that on Hot Takes.
So that sort of set the tone for the year, and then we've seen a lot more things coming into this. Women's basketball showing up in streaming platforms. Netflix NFL games on Christmas was an exciting announcement during the upfronts. But I think the biggest moment was clearly the Olympics, where the Olympics had huge viewership. It was a huge cultural moment. I thought one of the cooler things, and this is not totally pandering, it's a little bit pandering, but I thought the partnership you guys struck with Peacock was so interesting with that hub to be able to make it a better user experience, to be able to let people navigate, find what they want to find. And it was awesome. It really made it the Olympics are such a huge event that you kind of don't know where to start. Okay, I'm on this channel, and it's like badminton, but I want to watch swimming. But it actually was additive to the experience. And I think that's what streaming can do to video, and that was a really nice example from the summer. It really set off a lot of the momentum I think we're seeing now.
Well, it's interesting. Thank you for that. That wasn't planned, and we didn't pay for that. Although maybe there's a CPM situation we could figure out. Guys, there's a point, 2 points. No, but I appreciate you saying that because something we think about all the time. We see it with sports. We see it in the streaming. We're sitting on a ton of data here at Roku, watching what people are watching, whether we own the content or not, seeing what is happening with viewership, and we're seeing a ton of sports being streamed now. And it is interesting when you start to think about, and I'm in the business, right? I'm a Yankee fan. Go Yanks, we need to win tonight. But on Friday nights during the summer, I'm not even sure where the game is actually being. Is it on Amazon? Is it on Apple? Is it on Yes or whatever? One of the things we're doing off of our home screen, right, is things like the Olympic Zone, or partnering with the leagues themselves, which is like the MLB, NFL, NBA, to create these zones that live off of the home screen. Because most Americans now turn on a Roku set to watch TV. And so when they get there, there's this conundrum of, and I think you saw it on their multiple choices, if anybody's watched this before, like, how many minutes does it take for an average consumer to find what they want to watch when they're streaming a show? I mean, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 8 minutes, 11 minutes. 11 minutes, right? So 11 minutes, and half the time when we ask this question of clients and customers and consumers out there, like, and actually we never figure it out because we just get so exhausted and we go to sleep, right? Like, we're trying
to watch The Office.
Yeah, or a TikTok, which is a problem. It's a conundrum for consumers. It's a conundrum for streamers. It's also a conundrum for marketers because we want to bring them to an ad-supported environment. And it's also a problem for programmers, right? And so we've been working with folks like the NFL, like NBCU or Olympics, to make sure that consumers can find what they want to stream really easily. And the best part about this piece of it as the platform is that there's a lot of interesting, innovative ad format opportunities, whether it's engagement ads, whether it's branding ads. There's a lot of different ways for us to take this to the marketplace. If you're a league sponsor, great. If you're not, there's other ways around that, and it's a great way to leverage league sponsorships and to be additive there. So appreciate that perspective on things, and certainly with sports is something that we continue to see is going to be a big piece of what is happening in 25 from a streaming standpoint. So good to see that. 24 was the start of that, and probably more to come.
Agreed.
So we kind of talked about this a little bit just before about streaming opening up different opportunities. Love to hear your perspective on. Obviously, we've been doing a lot of test and learn with you guys. We put Neutrogena, one of your brands, in Roku City. And for those that don't know about Roku City, here it is. It's the streaming, beautiful, scrolling cityscape that when your Roku device goes idle, this will turn on your screen. For a while there, our engineers just built something kind of funky and cool and thought, hey, we'll just throw this on. And what we found is consumers were really into it. They started TikToking about it. They started tweeting about, Xing about it.
Redding,
whatever. They're on Substack with Matt. But it took on a life of its own, and we started introducing brands into the fabric of this, and it's seen by tens of millions of people every single month, which is really, really cool. So we'd love to hear your perspective on the lens is opening, right? The canvas is opening a bit when it comes to streaming. Certainly, I think you find, I shouldn't say this, but it seems like there's more willingness to do things differently from not just us, but from other streaming partners as well.
Yeah, I mean, touched on it a little bit before, but I think it just opens up more opportunities to connect and think about how to drive your brand message in a different way. It could be some of the units like you saw up here, incorporating into Roku City, which was super cool. We're really excited about. Really unique. Like, that's so uniquely Roku. That's, really just a cool moment for the brand earlier this year. But also the different ad units, the different, different parts of the, experience. You can just think differently. It's not just buying a 15. There's different sizes. There's different types of units. It's changing every day, it feels like. So I think it's really opened up more of a creative palette for brands, and it's a cool opportunity to drive that.
Love that. So getting into 25 now, let's talk 25. Audience fragmentation, right, has just been a thing. It seems to get more exasperated as we continue. Certainly people cutting the cord is creating a linear fragmentation as they enter the streaming landscape. That's fragmentation. So try to think, as a marketer, as leading investment for a very large set of brands, how do you think about broad reach and targeted and niche targeting?
Yeah, it is absolutely a balance, and you have to do both. I mean, I think the key is it's not an either or, it's an and. So you do need that broad reach to establish your foundational awareness with consumers, make sure you're top of mind. We sell a lot of household brands that everyone knows and loves, and it's not a super narrow proposition. Like, everyone gets headaches, and everyone needs to have clean, radiant faces, and buying Neutrogena Collagen Bank, for example. Go to Target, buy it, please. And there's a lot of those things. We just need to remind people that we exist. So that's one layer of it. That's super important. That's a lot of what we do. The other side, though, is really how do you break through? Given the fragmentation, given the distraction, what we're thinking about is sort of this baseline and more of a breakthrough tentpole sort of construct where you have this always-on support, but then you complement that with those big moments, those cultural moments, to make sure you stand out, really grab that extra attention, build more of that cultural relevance and equity, and those things work together. So I think it's really thinking about a more holistic plan to tackle both of those aspects, because if you're just doing foundational, I think you get lost in the mix. If you're just doing the big splashy stuff, it may be too sporadic to really wear in.
So sort of that like reach frequency, critical piece of on your baseline, on your always on, then looking at the right type of spike tentpole opportunities. Is there, what's your risk aversion for some of those tentpole? Obviously they're not maybe so much your tried and true, or it's a more expensive reach vehicle?
Yeah, I mean they absolutely are, but I think you have to have risk tolerance, or else what's the point? If it wasn't risky, it probably wouldn't do much for you. You have to look at it with a different lens, though. It's more of a long-term play. It's not going to drive sales in the next 12 weeks. That's going to show up on an IRI report or whatever. It's more of that long-term equity building. Are you doing the thing that is relevant? I think you're just guided by strategy. Does this align to my brand strategy, the longer-term initiatives I'm trying to drive for my brand? Use that as a guide versus, is this going to drive action right away? The answer is probably no. But a lot of these big, anthemic type of campaigns or things that are, long-standing relationships and partnerships are years long, and that's that way for a reason.
Gotcha. And just thinking about, as we think about fragmentation, right? Think about reach and communication goals and that type of thing. How important, because we are seeing fragmentation, certainly think about a lot about it here at Roku in the streaming landscape. We as the platform, right, we have our own owned and operated app. It's called the Roku channel. It's growing like crazy. It's on the Gauge, Nielsen report, right? It's doing well. But we also see all the individual apps and viewership across all of those. And we see, on average, some apps are being opened on average 2 days a month. Sometimes it's 8. At the high end, it's 8 times a month. How do you think about solving for the reach conundrum when you're talking about your always-on approach?
That's hard. I mean, that's where you have to look. There's usually not one solution. I mean, you have to look at a suite of solutions typically now, given the fragmentation, to really have more of a robust plan to reach consumers, given that they're going to bounce between platform to platform. They may spend two days a month, and if you miss one of those 2 days, you're running ads or they just didn't get served an ad, they're gone. You didn't catch them. So we look across the portfolio. You look across where you can control for reach and control for your buys through programmatic buying. That's a way to control for this in some way, but it's still a challenge. You can't do that with everything, and you really have to think, what is your consumer doing, and then how do you best show up as relevantly as possible. But reality is, you're never going to get it right. You just do the best you can. It's probably the worst answer I could give, but like,
there's a lot of science in there. No. Well, I was going to take you to the next question on that when you mentioned it, programmatic, right? And like, obviously, there's been a giant influx in how people are operating programmatically today. How do you see that reshaping your piece of the pie, but also the industry?
I mean, it solves for some of the problem you mentioned there, where we look across. How do you show up wherever they are, whenever they are? That's the easy answer there. I think as more programmatic partnerships get unlocked, it opens up a lot of interesting possibilities to control for that, to really think about the total consumer journey, makes measurement easier. So it's exciting. It's what we like to see, is being able to have more of that open environment. But it's probably never going to get perfect, but it is getting more open and more connected, which allows for us to get more creative, which I think is exciting.
Let's switch gears. You mentioned some of the social stuff before. We talked social commerce, but certainly want to hear your take on the rise of sort of short form content. Think about TikTok or YouTube Shorts. How's that affecting your brand media spending?
I think the interesting thing about the short form, long form conversation is that it's often happening on the same platform now. So with YouTube Shorts is next to YouTube. TikTok, while it's not different lengths, people definitely engage on a kind of traditional swipe, and then they stop and watch a movie. So there's all these sort of crazy behaviors that are starting to emerge that are creating different considerations for brands. So I need to now create for the short engagement where someone's just swiping through, and I need to be like, hey Neutrogena, and then they keep going. And then I also need to think about content, because people are engaging with content on the platforms. And then what's your engagement strategy there? If they want to stick around for longer, if they want to consume something that's a little bit more immersive, that you're ready for that as well. But I think it showing up in the same places has really been an interesting dynamic, where you could be like, this is long, this is short, and that's not really the case anymore.
And I think it's also, I love that perspective, and certainly thinking about the use cases and certainly thinking about the long form piece of it. The interesting thing too, I think, is we're seeing a lot of this activity, especially Gen Z, of streaming and swiping at the same time, right? Of using your mobile, your on TikTok or whatnot while you're streaming television. What's interesting is that when we think about sort of the data side of things, right? We understand targeting and measurement from a streaming standpoint, but it's also addressable, obviously, what you're doing on your mobile and doing on social. How are you starting to think about where you're driving people down the funnel and when between the two mediums?
I mean, I think the tough thing is that no two people's consumer journeys are the same. I think it's around availability and making sure that people are able to continue their journey and they don't hit a dead end. People may want to buy on their TV, they may want to buy on their phone, they may want to think about it and go to a store and buy in physical retail, which most people still do, but being ready for that. And I think it's really thinking about all the different endpoints and really just, do I have a solution for someone who wants to buy now or learn more or consume more content or reach them in another environment if they're not ready to buy? Can I retarget them in some way in another place or in store? Everybody's different. I don't think there's a one size fits all. It's just about being ready.
Love that. And thinking about different formats, different mediums, right? Different screens. How do you think about different ad formats? And starting to think about more innovative or different ad formats, shoppable media, augmented virtual reality, good old school branded content. How does that fit into the mix?
It's changing a lot. I mean, I think the shoppable media piece is one of those things that's been hanging for a while. Of like, it's there. The holidays are coming up. You're going to hear about, I'm sure, a million shoppable live streams, and this has happened for the last couple of years. It's super cool, super interesting. I don't know how much they actually sell through them. It's not really a behavior yet, but I think we could hit that tipping point. So the discussion around TikTok Shop and shoppable social commerce from a couple minutes ago. Again, I think you have to think about that consumer journey, and that could be a way that people start buying more. They're not quite there yet, but things like Amazon Live scaling, and they're creating more shoppable content in their owned and operated environments. So the investments there, the technology's there. I think that is a place you have to be mindful of, and just in general with innovative ad solutions, I would just always think about the consumer insight in your brand strategy. Does it actually make sense? Or are you chasing something to get an ad age? Don't do the latter. Like, if it actually makes sense for your brand, cool, let's try it out. And that's conversations we have all the time. Does it make sense? If it does, we'll do it. But if it's just doing it because it's cool, I will say no every time.
Love that. Smart. Super smart. You're smart. You're smart.
Let's keep going.
Handsome. We have a few minutes left. Let's go with this. So for our industry, we asked about 24. For our industry, 25 will be remembered as the year of blank.
Live. I will say live is the year of. So sports is obviously a live experience. You're seeing more things come into the live environment because it's how you get eyeballs. There's almost no appointment viewing anymore, except for live events, and everyone's getting wise to that. So sports is the obvious one, but Amazon's having Brian Williams do a live stream on election night next week. You've seen things like the roast of Tom Brady that was live on Netflix, and I think they're doing some other live comedy specials and start to announce they have the Tyson, Jake Paul fight that may or may not happen. I don't know. But you're seeing more momentum in this live arena. I think that is going to be huge next year, just because it's now proven out. The Olympics was probably the biggest proof point for that, but it's live plus. What can you do to enhance the live experience via different streams, different feeds? ESPN does this in a low-tech way with the Manning cast. That's effectively, it's a second stream, but can you imagine that for, how easy is that? The overhead's probably nothing, just to add another audio feed or another video feed to an event you're already broadcasting. So I think you're going to see live, but it's more like a live plus experience.
That's great insight, and I love that piece of it, because it seems like that's where it's going. Obviously, for years, the ad community has always paid a lot of money for the biggest live event, and that continues, so not surprising. All right. Last one, Caitlin, you give me the eye. I know we're gonna get the hook. This is it. This is the fun question. Speed round. I'm gonna say something. You're gonna tell me if you're long on it, like you think it's gonna be around, or you shorting it, that you think it's not gonna be around in the next year or 2 years. All right. You ready? Everybody understand? All right. Social commerce.
Long.
Excellent. Retail media.
As it stands today, short.
Ooh. That's juicy.
I like the elaborate, because I think it's a tax and it makes no sense when you look at the data. The data fees do not make sense for the performance. I think retail data is powerful. Retailers have owned and operated experiences that are incredibly powerful and make a ton of sense. It is not going to grow at the pace that they think it is once it starts bleeding into brand dollars, because the performance isn't there. So, short.
You heard
Love the controversy. Love that. No one wants to hear what they think. Yeah, right. We're here for a reason, guys. Got to mix it up.
AR, VR.
Short right now. I think it's too clunky. The technology is fantastic, but it's not there yet.
TV streaming.
Long.
Love you. Walled gardens.
Long, because I don't bet against monopolies.
Okay. There it is.
Until that changes, long.
We didn't even mention this yet, so I'm glad that we're mentioning it right now. Generative AI in marketing.
Long, but as a tool, as an additive piece of marketing, not a replacement.
I have this written, so I have to say it, but Roku.
Super long.
All right, everybody, please round of applause for Matthew. Thank you.